لو تغينا مزيس كنو فلنا نفريه بنا كنتبع لنا سبسي أي تفرحي نحق فرح نزقيها فرحي.
Hello, this is Tedros Mengistu. Welcome to Teddy First Show. Our guest today is Martin Plaut, a veteran journalist, author, and a former BBC News Africa editor, widely respected for his decades-long converge of politics and conflict across Africa and the Horn of Africa. We'll be discussing Israel's recognition of Somaliland and what it means for Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia, and the wider region. Martin, thank you so very much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be with you, and nice to meet a fellow journalist.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I would like you to give us a bigger picture first. As you know, Israel's recognition of Somaliland is a major diplomatic departure. How significant is this move in the context of Horn Africa geopolitics, and why do you think it matters now?
Well, I think there are two ways of looking at it. On the one hand, it is obviously a huge development. I mean, Somaliland has been independent, or believes it's been independent, since 1991, and when it declared its independence from Somalia, which it joined way back under President Siad Barre. But Somalia fell apart. Somaliland declared independence, and it's been trying to get recognition ever since then, and they haven't had any luck. Now, finally, Israel has taken the step and has decided to recognize it as an independent state, which is, of course, a huge development. It's something that ordinary Somalilanders have been working for and waiting for years and years and years. They thought that they had it with the Ethiopians. Then they thought maybe they get it from Donald Trump. Nothing happened. Finally, they get it from Netanyahu. Now, what we don't know, and we can perhaps explore, is what Netanyahu wants in return. But from the point of view of Hargeisa and the people of Somaliland, it's a major development, and they went onto the street for the whole night, and they were celebrating this big development. So that is huge from their point of view. On the other hand, it isn't a great deal. Now, the reason I say that is not because, of course, from a state and a boundary and sort of, a formal relationship, it's not important. Of course, it's important. But, when you think about the life of ordinary people who live in the Horn of Africa, and particularly the Somalis, I mean, I've never met a people for whom borders and boundaries and rules and regulations had less importance. I mean, they worry about their herds, their camels, their goats, the places they can water them, how they relate to each other, how they relate to other clans, their families. These things are hugely important. And of course, there are all sorts of other things that they are involved with in terms of trade. But, will it change the daily life of people? Probably not. So in that sense, it's not so important. But from a state point of view and from a point of view of formal structures, of course it is enormously important.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, as you know, many countries avoided recognizing Somaliland for decades. What do you think tipped the balance for Israel at this movement?
You know, I must be honest with you, I don't know. I mean, people have suggested to me that Prime Minister Netanyahu would like to export the Palestinians from Gaza to Somaliland, and maybe that is somehow in the background of all of this. It's possible. I don't know. Obviously, I'm not privy to the secret negotiations that may or may not have gone on. I mean, Netanyahu himself is both in a strong position military and in a weak position politically. So he's always keen to find an alternative, shall we say, issue to bring onto the table so that he can push away the problems that he can't deal with. I mean, like, for example, the fact that his religious parties will not allow their own orthodox, ultra-orthodox Jews to serve in the military, which all the rest of the population can't understand. Says, why should we die and you sit at home reading the Torah? So you know, that is something that is a big problem for him. So you put something else on the table, and for a moment at least, people talk about other things. So what are they going to do? I don't know. After all, they could have made this arrangement even if they hadn't offered independence. Sorry, not independence, recognition to the land. You know, it's a relationship between two governments, and they could have negotiated it without recognition, possibly. I don't know, but we'll have to wait and see.
Okay, great. So, yeah, as you know, Eritrea is also watching the Red Sea development closely. How do you think Asmara interprets Israel's move, particularly in relation to Assad and broader security dynamics?
Well, of course, it puts them in a slightly difficult position, because let's not forget that you know, President Isaias likes to say we got it all by ourselves. You know, we got our independence all by ourselves. And of course, I know that the 30-year war of independence that Eritrea fought for, you know, so it became an independent state from Ethiopia, was largely because of the work that and the suffering of the Eritrean people. I'm not denying that for a moment. Were they on their own? Certainly not. I mean, they got help from Syria, from Libya, from Egypt, but also from Somalia. And people forget that Somalia was very important in that relationship. And if I'm not mistaken, President Isaias himself traveled on a Somali passport for quite a long time. And there are historic links with the Somali people, which were reinforced after the collapse of the Islamic State courts, when they then went to Asmara and based themselves out of there for a while. Didn't last for long, but they were. So there's a long relationship. Now, that relationship, of course, is with the Somali people, not just with Somalia or with Somaliland or any part of it. So, you know, that is one element. That's the sort of history of that relationship, which I'm sure you know, and I'm sure, you know, people from the Horn know very well. But, you know, Eritrea is, of course, now worried about what Prime Minister Abiy wants to do, and why he keeps going on about taking back Assab, or taking Assab or Massawa, wanting to have a navy on the Red Sea. I mean, why? What is he going to do with it? I mean, it's to me, it's a bit of a pointless exercise. I mean, I've heard it said that when he transports goods through Djibouti, that maybe they get opened or inspected, and he doesn't like that. He wants to have his own base from which he can do these things. I don't know. So, you know, Eritrea is, of course, worried about what the Ethiopians are thinking of doing, and say they are going to do, say that they will do it. And of course, they want to have relations with people in the region to try and stop that. And they they do now have good relations with the Sudanese army, or the military side, and as opposed to the RSF. And they do have good relations with the Saudis, I think, and with Egypt. So that is one sort of nexus of support that they have, which they work on all the time. Where Somaliland fits into this is not quite clear, but because Egypt and Somalia are so close, that interrupts the Somaliland issue interrupts that. So I can see from a point of view of Asmara that this is worrying and perhaps I wouldn't say a threat, but could be an issue for them, and so they're responding accordingly.
They have a press release, which I cannot understand very well. It's very vague, and they try to throw the issue to the United Nations and China and so on and so on. But coming back to that region again, to TPLF, analysis note, even Shuttle Trumbo, I saw him wrote yesterday, for example, TPLF silence on the issue despite its ideological commitment to self-determination. What does this tell us about shifting alliance and political pragmatism in today's Horn Africa, do you think?
Well, I think it shows you how difficult it is to keep up with what's going on. I mean, the TPLF are usually pretty smart about how they arrange their relationships. But I mean, the thing that has happened since the end of the 2000-2022 war is that the unity of Tigray has been fractured, and that is the big development in the region. Because I mean, as long as I can remember, going back to the 1960s or 70s, the TPLF dominated Tigray and dominated the north of Ethiopia, and then, of course, after 1991, ran Ethiopia. And for them to be fractured is a major development. In fact, I think in some ways it's more significant than the recognition of Somaliland by Israel, because that is something that I don't think can be undone. And it will be very, very hard to put back the pieces and to try to make the people of Tigray once more a unified group. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it will happen. But there's so many forces now at play with the Fano, with the Eritreans, with Abiy, and where do the Oromo fit into all of this? I mean, after a while, your head just spins and you don't know where to look.
Yeah. Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah. So Ethiopia, has historically worked carefully, lying on Somaliland. Prime Minister Meles Zenawi even said before, if another country recognize Somaliland, we will be the second. I think Suyum Mesfin, the former foreign minister, also said the same thing. So how does Israel's recognition affect Addis Ababa strategically calculations, do you think, especially regarding the Red Sea access?
Well, I think it's too early to tell, and I'm sorry, that's a terrible thing to say, because I can't be sure. I mean, we know that there are two important meetings that are coming up which may define things. The first thing we remember is that Somalia, and quite obviously, has used every ounce of diplomatic muscle to try to make sure that nobody follows the Israelis. And they have mobilized all their diplomats and their resources and their relations with other countries to try to make sure that that is not going to happen. So that's the background. The second thing is that there is, as I understand it, a meeting of the UN Security Council, perhaps an emergency meeting, which is going to take place today. And I presume that what will happen is that everybody will get up and say this is a terrible idea, except the Israelis, who won't say it. They will say it's a great idea, and the United States will say nothing. That's just my assumption. I am absolutely.
Why do you think that?
Sorry?
I was thinking, why do you think that? I mean, I saw it also on your website that you said the UN Security Council is due to convene an emergency session on Monday, today, to discuss Israel's recognition of Somaliland, with members likely to condemn Jerusalem's move. Why do you think they will condemn?
Well, because most of them have already. You know, they've already done it, but of course they did it individually, and this takes it to the international level. I mean, you can see all the countries that have already said that they condemn the recognition by Israel, which is not surprising. So if that has already happened, well, they're going to get up and they're going to reiterate it. Now, it's interesting that Britain has said nothing about this, and of course, Somaliland was British. It was once British Somaliland and was a part of the British Empire until it gained its independence. And so Britain does have some residual responsibility for this, and Britain has made it clear that it thinks Somaliland has been well governed, certainly by comparison with Somalia. So I think Britain would be reluctant to come out really hard against Somaliland. On the other hand, you know, they want to have a good relationship with Somalia, and if they're pressured by the European Union, by everybody else, they'll probably say something which says, oh, this is not the way we think it should go forward, or something like that. But I don't think, look, this is a guess. Let's see what happens. I think that won't be, it will happen. There will be a meeting. People will get up and they'll make the usual statements. Somaliland, of course, has no place there. So the only people who could speak on their behalf, so to speak, would be the Israelis. And if it's too hostile, they may just walk out. And I don't know. Let's see what happens. The other meeting that is happening tomorrow, I understand, is that the Prime Minister of the President of
Somalia with Turkey, I think,
is going to Turkey. Yeah. So what is he going to ask from Turkey? What's he going to ask from Ankara? Because Ankara, along with Egypt, has been providing weapons and training for the Somali military. Would he ask? They have the Turkey has a big base in Somalia. Would he ask the government of Turkey to help them to actually try to put down the rebellion in Hargeisa as they would see it, and end the independence of Somaliland? Now, I find that very, very difficult to believe that it would happen. Is it impossible? No, it could happen. I mean, stranger things have happened in the past. So I can't see it happening, but perhaps they will try to do that. Where would Ethiopia stand if Somalia invaded Somaliland? Now, I think that the Ethiopia couldn't stand by and allow it to happen, because it would change the balance of power in the region. I think that Ethiopia would come in on the side of Somaliland and say, look, you know, we understand your concerns. We will negotiate. We would help you to think about these things. My guess is that what they would do is to say, no, we cannot allow this, and possibly even intervene on the side of Somaliland. Where would the UAE come in all this? They also have a base in Somaliland. Would they act? We don't know. These are all the issues that could come up if people go down the military route.
Yeah, the Israelis also as well, you know.
Possibly, although they're a long way away. But I mean, yes, I mean, they've shown that they can project their power a hell of a long way, as the Iranians discovered.
Yeah, great. From your perspective also, how may this recognition impact Somalia's internal politics, do you think, in relations with, of course, the regional international partners, especially the internal?
Well, you know, I must admit, that's not something I can really comment on. The only thing I would say is, traditionally, when a state is under threat, normally the population rallies behind the government. I mean, you know, I've seen it time and again in Eritrea, when Eritrea was attacked by Ethiopia or under threat from Ethiopia, then even opposition movements who hate President Isaias will say, look, you can't do this. We will come and we'll do what we can to support our country, because, you know, country first, party second. So I assume that would be what happens in Somalia as well. But who knows? And I mean, you know, after we've talked about a lot of the regional powers, we haven't talked about Kenya. Where would Kenya fit into all of this? I mean, the Kenyans, you know, have interests in Jubaland. They have interest in oil offshore. You know, they're worried about Al-Shabaab, which, you know, operates inside northeast Kenya as well. So, you know, they have a stake in Somalia's future as well. That's why everything is, you know, it's like one, it's like a pyramid of little blocks, and each one is interlinked with the other one. If you pull one out, sort of that half falls down as well. So it's difficult to see where it's all going, but certainly this is a major development. Nobody can dispute that. So, as I said, at the state level.
Wow, this is great. So, as you know, though, we are seeing increasing foreign interests from the Gulf states to global powers. So, along the Red Sea corridor, does Israel's recognition accelerate this trend, do you think?
Well, you know, I think when we look at Israel, we should look at it over the long term. If you think about it, going back to 1948 and the declaration of the State of Israel, there was immediate attack by its neighbors. All of their neighbors invaded Israel, and Israel fought and only just managed to survive as a state. And there have been repeated wars by its neighbors against Israel. However, gradually, its neighbors have decided that they are not going to win this fight, and they have gradually come to an understanding that they have a better relationship with their own people, a better life for their people, and a better relationship with the region and with the West if they have some relationship with Israel. They don't particularly like it. They don't like the Israeli state, but they get on with them. And if you think of a state like Jordan, like Egypt, Morocco, you know, all of these states now have an acceptable relationship with Israel. And, you know, I think from the Israeli point of view, the idea that you could now move one step further and have another member of the Arab League, you know, like Somalia, coming in as a potential, not supporter, but at least as not a hostile state, well, that's very attractive. So I can see that from an Israeli point of view, it is helpful to have the resistance to Israel reduced, because now the two major powers, leaving aside the Houthis in Yemen, who of course are, you know, completely opposed to Israel and have done everything in their power to attack Israel wherever they possibly can. You have the Iranians, who still, you know, are completely implacably opposed to Israel and would attack if they could. And the other one is the Saudis, who have refused to enter the Abrahamic Accords, which President Trump, you know, got put in place. So, and that has always been the great hope of President Trump, is that he would get Saudi Arabia to join the Abrahamic Accords. But I think that will not happen until the Palestinian issue is resolved in some way. And until that happens, I don't see the Saudis moving, because they see themselves as sort of the conscience of the Arab world, and, you know, the guarantors of Jerusalem, just as they are the guarantors of Medina and Mecca. So I think from their point of view, it is absolutely vital that they do not, you know, bend on this issue, even no matter how much they might like President Trump and would like to do a good deal with him, and they'd rather give him gold-plated airplanes than join the Accords at the moment. If things change, of course, things could change in Saudi Arabia as well.
Great. Coming back to African wider implications. Okay, could this decision open the door for other African or non-African states to recognize Somaliland, or does it risk handling opposition with the AU? Do you think?
Well, the AU has a policy where they say they won't allow the dismembering or the chopping up of African states, and that was why the founders of the African Union, way back in the 1960s, said that we recognize the colonial boundaries, not because they liked the colonial boundaries, not because they thought they were fair, but because they thought if they don't do that, then Africa will fragment into smaller and smaller states, and that will be to the power of Africa will be gradually diminished, and its voice will become smaller and smaller. And I mean, they had a good point. It is true, but gradually, of course, it has happened. I mean, you have the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic was recognized by the African Union, even if it doesn't really exist. Eritrea, after 30 years of the most extraordinary conflict, was finally accepted into the African Union, after a referendum. I actually witnessed the referendum in London, and I've never seen such an easy thing to witness. There was nobody who voted no that I could see.
I know.
And then I saw the same thing happen in South Sudan. So it's not as if countries haven't divided and subdivided and become independent, but of course it does result in it's uncomfortable for the African Union for the reasons that I explained, because Africa wants to be a powerful and united force.
Yeah, great. Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Martin. Coming back to you mentioned about South Africa, Eritrea. I mean, now is also Somaliland is trying to be independent. What do you think? You mentioned in the beginning that it may not mean anything especially for the people of economical situation and the situation. So, what do you think will? What do you think the outcome of all these small independent countries? Do you think?
Well, let's look at the way that people actually live in the Horn. I remember very well being in the far north of South Sudan after it became independent, and there was a huge UNHCR camp on the border, close to the border with Sudan. And I said to the man who was running it, they had about 100,000 people he was looking after, and he was actually from Sri Lanka. And I said, "So where are you going to? There are no roads here. I mean, we came in a jeep or a four-wheel drive car. How are you going to feed these people?" He said, "Don't worry. You wait an hour or so, and you'll see." And out of the bush suddenly crashes, and a huge lorry with a articulated lorry with a trailer behind it arrives. Who's driving it? A little Somali who has been coming all the way from Djibouti. And I said to him, "How did you get here?" He said, "Oh, you just go. You start in Djibouti and you ask, and you get here." So I mean, that's the way that. I mean, I bet you that he never asked anybody to stamp his passport or anything. He just came. So I mean, that is the way that the Somali population regards the world. Whatever you need to do, you do. And if you get in trouble, you ask your friends, you ask your clan, you ask your neighbors. So that to me is much more real in terms of how states operate than all the rest. And then of course there are all the other things. I mean, let me give you one obvious example. Have you ever seen in any economic analysis by the IMF, by the African Development Bank, by the World Bank, anywhere else, a line which says cut exports or imports? Well, we know that these are huge, that they happen all the time. I mean, I have flown over eastern Ethiopia, and you see the cart plantations going on as far as the eye can see.
Yeah.
It's all unofficial, and little planes go from northern Kenya. Everybody knows where they're going. They take it. It has to be fresh. They've got to get it there fast. They don't ask anybody's permission. They pay a few backhanders here and a bit of a backhander there. And even in, I believe that even in areas controlled by Al-Shabaab, that this trade still continues. So, I mean, here you have sort of it's not even at the state level. It's not even at the sort of the rebel controlled level. It's below that people are doing these things. The export of charcoal, which everybody knows takes place from Somalia, has been a huge part of its exports going to the Gulf and going to Saudi Arabia. And it's just part of life, and it's taxed by Al-Shabaab. It's taxed by everybody. They make money out of it. Do people talk about it? No, very seldom. But it's very, very important. So all I'm trying to say is, when you look at government structures are one thing, but real life is often a bit more complicated and much less easy to understand. And that is why I say, well, what is done at a formal state level, yes, of course it's significant. I'm not denying it, and it may have consequences which I can't even predict. But much more important is the culture of people, their systems of trade, their systems of, so we say, social relationships. I mean, Somalis will have friends in the Gulf, they'll have friends in Europe, in Britain, and wherever, and they know how to make things happen. I mean, I can get a transfer of funds at a market where I live. If I walk up the road, I could transfer funds to the most remote village in Somalia. All I have to use is the Hawala system. Everybody knows you can do it. It may be expensive, but you can do it. And that's not the official system.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry, I had I'm sorry. Sorry.
No,
in your assessment, Martin, who stands to gain most, do you think, out of the Somaliland's recognition, do you think? Or who risks long, do you think?
Well, obviously, the government of in Hargeisa is the big winner in all of this, and the people who have backed them. That's particularly the UAE. So, if they can become established and recognized, and let us say, for example, and I'm not predicting, let us say that Britain or Ethiopia or I don't know, somebody else decides that that they will recognize them formally. Maybe Taiwan, because they are always keen to find another place to get some recognition. Because they're also under threat from China. So I think at the state level, they are the big gainers. And there are a lot of things that could come from that. For example, let us assume that after all the shouting and screaming and the unhappiness is over, let us assume that the people of Somaliland, have a referendum or maybe an election at which they make it quite clear that this is a vote which will endorse the decision of independence, which after all goes back to 1991, but just to endorse it, and it's supervised by the UN. then they could become perhaps members of the African Union, members of the United Nations. It's not impossible. Other states, for example, Eritrea, have done it, so it could be done. There's no reason why it can't. And then a lot of doors will open to them. Some of them will be financial. For example, the World Bank and the African Development Bank would begin to say, well, how can we help you? What do you need in terms of investment? And they could work with, shall we say, the UAE to have a joint development of, I don't know, a camel farm, or I mean, I'm making it up. You know, and there are all sorts of things that could be developed there, maybe mineral extraction. So those things which are not available to Somalilanders because they are not an official recognized state, you know, it would be open to them. And, you know, for example, because they are a former part of the British Empire, they could join the Commonwealth. Now, the Commonwealth may sound like a very old-fashioned thing which has no importance, but I assure you that it does. And I will give you one example. I know for a fact that when, say, Tanzania, which is a member of the Commonwealth, has an outbreak of a really difficult, rare disease in which the Indians are specialists, for example, that they go use the good offices of Britain and the Commonwealth to approach the Indians. The Indians say, sure, we'll send you, you know, half a dozen vets, and we've got various vaccines we can try out, and they work together. So, I mean, look, that's very small scale. I'm not trying to sort of say this is a huge issue, but those kind of things are available to you when you're a state. And so I think that those are important developments of, you know, who will be the losers? Well, of course, the big loser is Somalia. Let's not forget, Somalia has a 5-pointed flag. We all know what the 5 points mean. They mean the Ogaden, northern Kenya, Somalia, Somaliland, and Djibouti. That is what the five-pointed star represents.
Wow.
And Somalia and Somalis would dearly love to see their people reunited, at least in some form. But, you know, even this development might be a way of that coming about, because if Somaliland becomes recognized as a formal independent state, then there's nothing that would stop, you know, shall we say, in maybe 5 years, 10 years time, to have some kind of federation of the Somali peoples. I mean, after all, the European Union came about after 2 world wars. And people forget that, you know, once upon a time, the French and the German young people killed each other in their millions. And who would have thought that a few decades later, the border between the border between France and Germany, people can hardly remember where it is. You just walk across it. It's nothing. It doesn't mean anything anymore. So I think that all I'm saying is I'm not predicting that this will happen. I'm saying these are opportunities which might happen if this goes well, and it may go very badly. And I'm not predicting. All I'm saying is these are opportunities that could happen if things went well.
I hope they open their eyes and minds to, you know, to see all these opportunities so they can avoid, you know, tragic wars there. So, Martin,
let me just make one point to you. Look what happens every time the border between Ethiopia and Eritrea is open. What happens? People pour across the border. They embrace each other. They love each other.
I know.
And these are the people who've been fighting each other. I mean, what can I say?
You're right. You get it. So I know, Martin, you followed the Eritrean opposition groups for many decades, both inside and outside the country, in light of the Israeli recognition of Somaliland and the growing strategic importance of the Red Sea. How do you think the Eritrean opposition groups interpret these shifts?
Oh, that's a good question. I wish I could answer it. I see the Blue Brigade have welcomed it,
Uh-huh.
and but beyond that, I haven't seen any response. And I must admit that I have stopped trying to follow the Eritrean opposition groupings. There are so many of them. They keep forming and reforming, and then
Mm.
falling apart. I mean, there was Yakel, and there was the the Blue Brigade, and
Mm.
the ELF, and the EPLF, and so many subdivisions. And I just can't go on spending my life working on who is part of which group and why they've split and why this one has joined the other one.
Mm.
I'm sorry, I must admit I've given up.
Oh, really? Oh.
What can I say?
Oh, okay, okay. What made you to give up this?
Well, there were just too many. And I would get to know one group, and then they would fall apart, and then they would sometimes not explain why it
Mm.
happened, and sometimes somebody would tell me, oh yes, it was because of this and this and this, which is
Mm.
fair enough. Everybody has a right to change their mind and find differences between them and somebody else. I mean, it was let us be cynical about things. There have been two great leaders in the Horn of Africa in recent times, in my lifetime,
Mm.
who held their countries together. Neither of them were Democrats. Neither of them were nice people. One was Siad Barre, and the other is Isaias Afwerki. And both of them have done terrible things to their people. And it is a great tragedy that they came to rule them, but they did keep their countries together.
I mean,
And
Martin,
yeah,
how do you
that's
think? How do you think the Isaias kept Eritrea together when there is no people? I mean, the majority of the only kids and elder people are left there. So,
oh,
Asmara, Eritrea is the most impotent nation in
it's true.
Africa.
What you say is right. I mean, I'm not denying it for a moment. And the fact that he hasn't even allowed people to repaint their houses for years and
Yeah,
years and years.
yeah, yeah.
What I am intrigued by, and don't have an explanation for, is why he has begun to let out a certain number of political prisoners who've been in jail for years and years and years. I know he did it in the past, but seems to be a few more than there have been. And I mean, I just hope that the thousands who rot in his jails are released. It's appalling suffering, and I absolutely, as long then I could not stand another war in the Horn of Africa, and I cannot imagine what I would feel like if I was an Eritrean or an Ethiopian. Thought my leaders are going to call me for another war, and my children.
Mm.
I mean, there cannot be a single family in Eritrea who doesn't have dead in the dead on their conscience, and know that the suffering has been indescribable. Um, and for
Yeah.
what? I mean,
Yeah, of course. I lost my two older brothers, and I was also in the military service. And as you mentioned, it's our reality. You're right. Coming back to, I mean, to Eritrea. What would you advise the opposition group? Do you think? So if you were an Eritrean, I mean, living Eritrean origin, living in the Western countries, what would you do? What would you advise to the opposition group? Do you think?
that is the most difficult question, to which I would struggle to find an answer. I think in reality, Eritreans know that the President Isaias will not live forever. He's now in his late 70s. And where is power going? And the only real institutions in Eritrea that still exist are the the church, the mosque, and the army. I mean, there really isn't anything else apart from, I mean, the party still exists, of course, but he doesn't even call party meetings. There are no, there'd be no elections to party, to party positions. There's been no Congress for years and years and years. So I think the party is finished, except for the people that he actually controls personally. I mean, it's surely the most personal form of government, is that you just rule in the way you want to and you move people around. And he is amazingly good at doing it and dividing and subdividing people. And, it's not for nothing that opposition groups fall apart abroad. He has money to divide people. He has money to buy people. He has money and he spends a lot of time sending people abroad to try and do exactly that, to, infiltrate organizations and split them from inside. And he's been doing that since the 1970s. So, this is a very, very old strategy. And he's extremely good at doing it. But he won't last forever. And, if I was in the opposition, I would begin to try and think, how can I reach out to the real organs of power when President Isaias goes? Because, real tragedy would be that that the unity of Eritrea is lost after President Isaias, and that the divisions that existed under the British mandate period, when there were divisions between the Unionists and the Islamists or the Muslim groups, over the future of Eritrea, and that would be awful if we go back to those kind of splits. Where would the Afars want to go? I don't predict the future, and so I'm not going to say how it would go. But I think it would be terrible and terribly worrying if something that people have created over generations, which is the unity of Eritrea, was lost at that moment. So who can you have a link with? But it can't be easy, because I think President Isaias has spies in every camp, and he pays people, and they know that. When was the last time we had it was with the Fortro uprising? What was that? 2013, when the tanks arrived on the edge of Asmara. It's the last time we saw any ripple of opposition, and well, they were all killed. So it's I think his death will be a dangerous moment for Eritrea. And bad as things are now, I would fear that there's the possibility they could become even worse after his death, because there are lots of outside bodies and states who might think, well, this is our chance. Ethiopia, for one, could think now's the time to take Assad. We don't know, but that these will be dangerous times, and unity will be incredibly important, and laying the foundations for that unity is what I would be trying to do. And I have friends of mine in the Eritrean opposition I know have been thinking about this for a long time. They haven't had much success.
I know. So, Martin, thank you very much for sharing your insights with us today, as the Horn of Africa enters a period of rapid geopolitical change. Conversations like this help our audience better understand what is at stake. And thank you so much again.
It's a pleasure.
We'll see you some other time, maybe. With this, our viewers, we finish our program for today. Thank you so much for watching us. We'll see you some other time.
Thank you.
لو تخينا مسكن وفلنا نفريه بلنا كنتبع لنا سبسي أي تفرحي نحق فرح نزقيه فرحي